Now there are some things that are different about the driver, such as number one, we put the ball up on a tee as opposed to obviously a 7-iron is going to be on the ground. The club is longer and it has less loft on it. But our attitudes towards actually making the swing shouldn't really change from pitching wedge, sand wedge to driver. Our swing method doesn't change. The way that we approach the ball isn't really changing, but the way that we maybe address it and the way that we set where we place the ball in our stance and how far away from the ball that we are, all of those things do change. So let me just point out a couple of things that I think are really important to get sorted out first. You need to make sure that the shaft flex that you have in your driver matches the rest of your set. You don't want to be swinging a different type of club because you're going to get a different response from the shaft. And you're going to learn to swing with your irons, and then when you try to hit with your driver with that same swing, you're going to get a completely different result because the shaft is responding differently. So it's very important that you get your club fit to make sure that that shaft flex is matched up with the rest of your set. The other thing that I see frequently when it comes to equipment that's wrong about the drivers that I see in people's hands is the amount of loft that's actually on the face. I commonly will find someone who has maybe an 80 or 90 mile per hour swing speed trying to hit a club with 7 or 8.5 degrees loft. That's not going to get the ball up in the air, and they're going to try to make a swing that will produce a shot to get the ball up in the air. Often you'll see people with too little loft on the club, and they try to swing up on the ball. Especially with a ball that's teed up. They'll tee the ball really far up in the sky because they really think they need to hit up on the ball. Now let's go ahead and talk a little bit about our setup to the ball. The grip is going to stay the same. We don't want to get a stronger grip or a weaker grip. We don't want to try to turn our hands this way or this way on the club. We really should continue to try to produce that same neutral grip that we do with all of our other clubs. The next thing that you're going to want to look at is the width of your stance. Now, a wider stance doesn't necessarily mean that you need to get way out here like this, and you don't want to, I don't know about this whole keeping it shoulder width, because I don't know anybody that knows exactly how wide their shoulders are. So shoulder width doesn't really make much sense to me. I use this analogy all the time. How much weight would I be picking up? If I have a couch that I'm going to go over here and lift, I'm going to need to brace myself to get it. I'm going to get my legs fairly far apart if I'm figuring about 100 to 110 pounds that I'm going to be lifting up off the ground. I'm going to get some distance between my legs. So I usually go off of a weight system, thinking that I'm about ready to pick up a couch that weighs about 100 pounds on my end. The next component about hitting the driver that we're going to look at is ball position. And for me, I'd say that you really need to make sure that you understand where the low point in your golf swing is. And the low point in your golf swing is always going to basically center around where this left shoulder is at the time that the club reaches the ball, okay? Or it's basically where does its full extension meet when the club, head, and the shoulder are all in line. That's going to determine where the lowest point is. And this is going to happen at the point of impact, which is going to have your body slightly rotated, okay? And you're going to have that full extension. Well, so if I just imagine for a moment here that I'm going to throw this ball with my right hand, okay? But I'm going to continue to look at where the ball is after I've thrown it. You're going to notice that you develop this impact position where my head is slightly behind about where the ball would be, and my left shoulder here is out right over about the heel of my left foot. And if I drop a ball, that's right about where my ball placement should be. I believe that the hands need to be in the same spot on every club. The hands need to be right off the left inside, the inside of your left thigh here. So with your iron, since the ball placement would be further back, but the hands are still ahead, you're going to see this angle to the shaft. Well, with the driver, it's going to be a little different situation. When we have the ball placement much more up off the left heel, okay, and we create that straight line off of our left shoulder, now we don't really have the same angle in front of the ball that we had before. It's going to be more or less a straight line, even though my hands are right off of my left thigh. So for all of the clubs in your bag, including the driver, I believe your hands should be right off of that inside of that left thigh. As for the height of the golf ball on the tee, I think that it's going to vary from person to person, but for me, I usually go just a little bit so that the top of, or the equator of the golf ball is just slightly above the top of the line of the club. That's about average for a lot of people. Some people like to tee it up higher, some people like to tee it lower. If you just understand that if you tee it up higher, you're going to have a tendency to try to swing up on it. If you have the tee down on the ground a little bit lower, you're going to have a tendency to try to swing down on it a little bit more. I don't think you really want to do either. You really want to be making a motion that is sweeping the ball off the tee. So having the tee height properly set can often influence how you're going to be trying to swing to hit the golf ball. And then the last thing that we're going to look at before we actually start swinging is going to be what we all refer to as axis tilt. And for the driver, this is especially important that you have the proper amount of tilt in your setup. If you set your body up over here on the left, what's going to happen is that you're going to again try to hit more down on the ball. If you set too far back here on your right foot, you're going to be trying to hit up on the ball. So having the right amount of tilt is going to influence the path that this club head is traveling when it strikes the ball. And to do that, what we need to do is we need to figure out a good measuring stick of how much tilt should we have. And through a process of elimination and a process of error, trial and error, I have found that, of course, the old standby of taking this club and sticking it straight up your chest, okay, and tilting your body so that the inside of your left knee is struck by the grip of the club is a good determining factor in about how much tilt we should have, okay? Another good little eyeball adjustment that I see is if I figure that my left hip gets over the heel of my left foot, while my right shoulder gets over the right heel of my right foot. And that basically sets me up every time in the proper position without having to go through this whole, up my sternum and try to tilt it back like this. So let's go ahead and prepare to hit this golf ball. And I find one of the tips that I remember Jack Nicklaus in Golf My Way, of course, he always mentioned how much he prefers to have the club hovering off the ground. He does not like to set the club on the ground. Now, sometimes I catch myself doing this too, where I'll set the club on the ground because it just feels more comfortable to me. But there's one key thing that I think really changed my mind about this. When I hover the club, there's nothing that's going to get in the way of that path when it goes back. But if I am putting the club on the ground, if there's a little pebble or a tee that I can't see that's back there, it's going to disrupt the way that I take the club back. And right from the get-go, my whole rhythm is thrown off. So I strongly believe now, and I teach this to people who get to this point, you really should hover the club off the ground so that you're just hovering it directly behind the ball, about square to where you want the center of contact to be on the club face, right behind the ball. And again, that's just because we don't want to drag it and hit something on the way back, which would disrupt our rhythm. I think that the last thing that we really need to remember before we strike this golf ball, and as we start to take it away, is to keep the same attitude, as I said, of hitting your 7-iron, hitting your 6-iron. Any other club in your bag, you're still going to want to put the same swing on this club, on this ball. It's just that it's in a different position and that we've addressed it slightly differently. But we're still going to make that same swing that we would on the 7-iron. There's not going to be more effort to hit it harder. Okay, this may be a distance club, but it's designed to hit it a certain distance already. We need to trust that distance. We don't need to try to force it to go further, because the more force that you try to apply to it, of course, the worse the shot can tend to be. So I'm going to set up to this golf ball. Ball placement slightly off my left foot. Good deal amount of axis tilt. Cover the club. Swing like a 7-iron.